Hello, everybody. This is Howie Hawkins from a basement in Brooklyn, New York. I'm really live in Syracuse, New York, but I was down here. We made a statement today in front of the New York Stock Exchange. New York State has a stock transfer tax that brings in $13 billion a year over the last 10 years. And that's just about the state deficit in this COVID crisis. And Governor Cuomo won't keep those revenues. They've been rebated to the traders on Wall Street since 1981. So we were down there to say, Cuomo wants to cut 20% across the board to schools, hospitals, aid to cities. So we're down there to say this is how we save our cities and our schools and our healthcare system. And then we walked up to City Hall and said de Blasio and the city council should light a fire under Cuomo's butt. He should get behind the legislation and get that money. He wants to wait for the feds to step up, and they're deadlocked. Next Congress, by the time we get it, I come from a city where the pools were closed this summer. City did a GoFundMe to try to open up at least one pool for the kids during the heat of the summer. That's inexcusable. So that's why I'm in New York City, and we got some more events. We're going to march with a climate justice through racial justice demonstration on Sunday, and a meeting with Greens tomorrow at a fundraiser. And so that's what I've been up to. Is all you probably heard. We got knocked off the ballot in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I won't go into the details except to say that both major parties are using the Green Party as pawns on their chessboard, and they're partisan hacks on these election commissions and in courts. And pretty much the vote on those commissions and in those courts was partisan, party line. And what kind of democracy has the two governing parties administering their own elections? But we won't go into that detail because we're here to celebrate the victory in Texas, where the Greens got back on the ballot. But before I introduce that, I just want us all to acknowledge that Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died before we came on here. And I think we have to acknowledge her contribution to gender equality in particular, to balancing the courts so it wasn't completely right-wing. And now there's going to be a huge political battle. And we need to raise our voices that there should not be a new Supreme Court justice appointed, recommended, or approved until we go through the election and a new president and Congress are seated. We know that Obama appointed a moderate, middle-of-the-road judge, and McConnell wouldn't let him even consider it for a whole year. Unprecedented. That's how, we got this negative partisanship situation where both parties make the other party sound like, a bunch of devils out of hell. So people don't vote for their own party. They don't really like their own party. They vote against the other party. And that's why we need the Green Party, because we have a positive solution to these real problems that we face. And I'm not going to lay that out. I get into my stump speech. But anyway, I just wanted us to, send our condolences to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's family and the whole nation, because this puts us in another crisis with an idiot in the White House. So that's enough said on that. So let me introduce Laura from Texas, who's going to introduce the Texas candidates, and they're the stars of this show tonight. So go ahead, Laura.
Well, hi.
Well, wait, maybe Andrew wants to say a few words while we're opening up, and then we'll get to Laura.
I'm just listening. It's really dope to meet you, Laura. With the news coming about the death of Justice Ginsburg, I just want to, add my voice to lifting her up. She was a warrior for many years for issues that I support, and so for fighting, the good fight as long as she did, I think she deserves recognition for that. So rest in power.
Absolutely. But Howie, Angela, I just want to say first how excited we are all to be with you tonight, and how important this issue of partisanship and fair treatment in the courts really is. We certainly saw it in what happened in Texas. Of course, it's really specific what happened here because related to implementation of the new ballot access law. But what basically happened was the Democrats filed a lawsuit in a Democratic-controlled court, gave us 18 hours to respond, and then ordered us to declare our own candidates ineligible. And basically railroaded us with like 3 lawsuits falling in my lap all at one time. you know, so that we were just overwhelmed. And then when we thought, you know, we were just out of luck, the Republicans tried to use this same issue against the Libertarian candidates who also did not pay this newly imposed filing fee. And that didn't work out for them. And the state Supreme Court opened the door for us to be able to file and get relief. And so in a nutshell, there's a lot of different pieces of litigation that affect things. But in the last week of the filing period back in December of 2019, there was actually an injunction in place for these filing fees. And so that's why there was this uncertainty about whether they would or would not apply, because there was an ongoing constitutional challenge. And so it's also very disingenuous to see the Democrats and the media try to spin this like the Green Party's responsible for delaying ballots, when it was their very calculated waiting and creating a false emergency and leaving us no time for recourse that created this whole situation. So anyway, I'm glad we could stick up, you know, for our ballot access down here, and we're doing what we can to try to support and build the party down here. And so we're just really glad to celebrate with you guys tonight. Let's see, you know, there was one other thing, if you don't mind me sort of throwing it in, about party building and party organization. This really highlights the function, one of the important functions of the state parties, which is to untangle all of these relevant legal details in each of the states and to light that path for how down-ticket candidates would get on the ballot in each of the particular states, and to sort of be custodians of that little pilot light for the national party. And so I think that's something that's important for us to keep in mind as we try to encourage growth of other state parties as well. Did you guys have any questions about any of the specifics about the lawsuits?
I'm just excited that I won. You know, and I'm echoing, but I think that just listening to the way that you laid it out, it's the same playbook they used in Wisconsin. You know, you find a frivolous, flimsy excuse to pull something against the party, you know, a small independent party that you think is going to tuck its tail and say, oh, okay, you're bigger than I am, you have more money than we do, we're going to just back up. Nah, baby. Y'all, you know, just like with Wisconsin, we fought them all the way to the Supreme Court. Y'all fought them and you won. So, you know, like Howie said at the top, you know, we are geeked to be here celebrating you.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I saw somebody in the comments say, are we delaying the absentee ballots? We are not. It is the Democrats that started all these proceedings in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And I think it was collaboration between the Democrats and Republicans in Wisconsin. They had all the information in the Wisconsin Supreme Court to make a decision 8 days before they said we were too late, and didn't look at the merits of our case. The dissenting opinion did, and it showed by the law and the facts we should have been on the ballot. So we got set up. And in Pennsylvania, it was the Democrats that extended this by challenging the fact that I'd been placed on the ballot. So now, of course, you're going to hear from Rachel Maddow, Amy Goodman, who didn't really look at the facts, as well as, you know, mainstream corporate media, that we were holding it up. And even that, you know, we're a Republican op, is the way Rachel Maddow put it. Her facts are all wrong, and people got to understand that. And we're up against corporate state media. You know, you got state media coming out of one-party states. We got a two-party corporate state. And so you got to dig to find the facts. And the thing I like about Texas is it was the Greens that challenged basically a poll tax, these high filing fees. And they challenged them and won. So, you know, that's what we're here to celebrate tonight. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the candidates who challenged that and won.
Awesome. Yeah, it was truly a group effort, a real scramble of a lot of volunteers to put it together. And in Texas, anyway, the Greens are actually in the same boat as the Libertarians, and that we're minor convention nominating parties. So, we do what we can to protect our interests as much as possible. But I'm excited to turn it to our candidates a little bit too. One of the reasons this is really important is because the three candidates that were restored were David Collins for our U.S. Senate position, Katja Gruen for our Railroad Commission, which is the position in Texas that regulates the oil and gas industry, and also Tom Wakely for U.S. Rep 21 in Bexar County, which is looking like one of our strongest races to date, and like he might actually have a good chance of winning. So that's very exciting. So the main thing I really want to give our candidates an opportunity to share is what they feel like they would bring to the office that they're seeking as Greens. And so I wonder if maybe we could ask David Collins to share his thoughts on what his Green perspective could bring as a senator.
Was that a segue or was that a segue? Hello, everybody. I am David B. Collins. I am the candidate, the nominee for U.S. Senate from the Green Party of Texas. And you've just heard from Laura Palmer, in case you didn't get that earlier. She is one of the stalwart co-chairs of the Texas Green Party. Before I get into anything else, I have seen in the comments that some folks in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are distraught and wondering how they can cast a vote for Hawkins and Walker this year because they don't want to vote for the big two. And they recognize that the Green Party has once again been shafted. I think there's something about write-ins. If you, before we go any further with this, go ahead and give them some details on how they can write you in.
Learn how to spell our names. And when you get the ballot, write us in. We will be counted in those two states. And we will get literature out in each state for how to do it in that particular state. So you can still vote for us in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. We just won't be on the ballot.
Right. Now, y'all mentioned a couple big names, Rachel Maddow and Amy Goodman, but let's look at something from the positive side as well. A certain Crystal Ball from Rising on thehill.com. Yes, big shout out to Crystal because she went on a tear, a huge rant about how the Democratic Party is acting, well, undemocratic in so many ways, as they have for a long time, and that's why so many of us have left the big two parties. She herself is not a Green, but she sympathizes with people who have declared themselves done with the duopoly, and she herself is saying that she can't be convinced to vote for either Trump or Biden. She hasn't said whether she's going to vote for Howie and Angela. She's been kind of coy about it. But I salute her for at least bringing it up, even if it's not one of your major media sources. It's certainly not MSNBC, which I remember from watching them 10 years ago. They actually were flirting with progressivism for a while. It's just that anybody who got a little too progressive for them was fired. So
well,
I'm very much done with MSNBC.
Crystal Ball did her homework and got the facts right. It was
Here.
real journalism. The others were just repeating what they were hearing from the Democrats. And, that's disappointing.
Right. Remember when Woodward and Bernstein were considered rebels and heroes to the cause, and journalism actually was a public service. Now they're just stenographers for the empire, and that's got to stop. So, Laura, you got questions? Fire away.
Yeah, David, I really just want to give you an opportunity to talk about, the role of a senator in focusing U.S. foreign policy and how, our nation is so far off the mark from what our green vision would be. So I really want to try to steer you towards the perspectives you would bring as a senator if you had the opportunity to serve.
Well, thank you for bringing up foreign policy. Interestingly enough, out of all the 7 or 8 questions on the League of Women Voters Texas questionnaire, there was not a single question that was dedicated to foreign policy, which is a big part of the senatorial diet. Pardon me. The closest they got was immigration policy. Of how are we going to solve the immigration problem, or the problem of refugees or people seeking asylum on our borders and so forth. And as far as I'm concerned, that was just the wrong question. The question to ask is, why has United States foreign policy been so morally bankrupt, especially in our Latin American quote-unquote backyard, for so many decades? I did mention in one of the messages that I recorded for Houston Public Media and for Texas PBS that what we got is a problem of people fleeing the countries that we have helped destroy through our military spending, through our protection of dictators over the years and people, dictator wannabes, and making it so that they have limited choices. I keep thinking of this choice between Democrats and Republicans or Biden and Trump today as just the El Salvador choice. It was so much like in the 1980s when your only choices in El Salvador were center right and far right. And that was only because the US actually did some talking to El Salvador and said, you got to have at least something that looks somewhat liberal on the ballot so you'll have some sort of international legitimacy. Well, the problem with the United States right now is that we don't have any actual international legitimacy. People certainly love us for our culture and the freedom that we talk about so loudly over our media sources, but they certainly don't care much for our neoliberal economic policies and our neoconservative foreign policies, which are nothing but running interference for the corporatist empire. Nobody in the two major parties and nobody in the major media will talk about that, because it's the part you're not supposed to say out loud, that the United States has become what it says that it deplores. We supposedly defeated a wannabe empire in the 1940s, and I wouldn't say that we've gone so far in that direction that we have become Nazi Germany, but we certainly have those tendencies. Not just domestically, but on the world stage. And that's got to come to a stop. Howie is proposing a 75% reduction in defense spending or something like that. 75%, is that what you're saying? And you've got all the numbers crunched. And we got to put those towards what Martin Luther King called programs of social uplift. And all those people, all those people who claim to admire Dr. King so much, and you don't really get what he said, they just need to shut up and let the doc speak for himself.
But it's, sometimes the truth is painful to hear, but we do have to realign our priorities. And thank you so much for that. And speaking of priorities, the other statewide race that we had our candidate restored for Railroad Commission, Katya Grun, is also with us. And I would love to give her also an opportunity to talk about the green perspective that she would bring to the Railroad Commissioner office if she got a chance to serve.
Hello, Kat.
Hey,
Hi, Kat.
everyone. Well, interestingly, so as Laura mentioned, the Railroad Commission actually regulates the oil and gas pipelines and extraction, and also the extraction of coal and the extraction of uranium. They don't regulate railroads anymore. And it started as a consumer protection agency to protect farmers from being exploited by the corporations. It explicitly was there to prevent exploitation of the public by corporations, namely railroads. And there have been numerous instances, or there have been several instances when the elected commissioners have gone back to that purpose as far as regulation. But for a long, long time, the railroad commissioners have basically rubber stamped anything that the oil and gas industry wants to do. And we don't really hear anything about the coal and uranium, but they are both issues in Texas. So, and the three top environmental groups in Texas are preventing me from participating in a forum next week because I'm not one of the top two candidates. And so this comes to the point of the Democrat only wants to deal with flaring. She hasn't talked about capping all the abandoned wells. She hasn't talked about uranium extraction, coal extraction, pipelines. anything. The only thing she's focused on is flaring, which obviously is a big issue, but she's also a petrochemical lawyer. So she's not going to go out on the limb when the industry is already kind of regulating itself on flaring, based on my recent research. So it's not a big risk for her to address that one environmental issue. But the petrochemical industry is, we're part of Cancer Alley, and no one really talks about that in the political arena anymore, aside from activists outside of the electoral arena. So what I would bring to the table is that I have contacts in all of these organizations that have been working for the people to try to rectify the Cancer Alley situation, the uranium extraction issue, the coal issue, the pipeline issue, and more, just moving Texas away from a fossil fuel industry giant to a alternative energy giant. We have plenty of sun and solar and wind in this state that we could be utilizing, and eliminating a lot of things like the nuclear plants, the coal plants, shut down a lot of the industries and not build new pipelines, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's such a good point to make. It's the green perspective. Industry is so well represented, so very well organized. They don't need help getting their perspective into government consideration, and any kind of socialist or left perspective has been shut down for so long, and then the media consolidation and bias, it just really warps the entire electoral process. So I'm really glad, that we're at least getting a run here where you can take that message to the public. We also have Julian Villarreal, who is running for state senate in District 26, which is Bexar County. And Julian, I'd want to put the same question to you. What do you feel like you would bring to the office that you're seeking?
Well, for starters, I think I would bring my perspective as a scientist, as someone who has worked in higher education here in Texas. I studied, taught, and worked in the University of Texas system, and the legislature is in charge of funding and setting education policy, not only for the university level, but for all levels. And I think we need folks in the legislature who have that lived experience. I know firsthand what students in public universities here in Texas have to deal with, and the challenges that they bring. They often excel despite very difficult circumstances, working full time, coming from immigrant backgrounds, low income, all sorts of backgrounds, and they need the support in order to succeed, in order to excel. I'm also a scientist, so I've seen a little bit of the research side as well, and there is much need in the sciences here in Texas. And I think also I would bring a voice for folks who feel strongly about addressing climate change and all of the challenges that Texas is currently facing and will face. In 2017, we had the catastrophic Hurricane Harvey that hit the Houston area. Here in San Antonio, we buckled down, and we thought it was going to hit us, but it didn't, And in 2017, the legislature, the governor could have called a special session to deal with this $1 trillion catastrophe that hit Texas. He didn't. Hardly any member of the legislature called for action. And so we had to wait almost 2 years for the legislature to take any action. And all they did was, some tailoring of water infrastructure, nowhere near what is needed to address the huge problem. What Katia was mentioning as well, and so we really need more action there. Unfortunately, the Democrats in the legislature, they take the Republicans' lead. Their dance partners two-stepping in the wrong direction, and so we really need members of the legislature who are going to be a strong voice, and that's what I think I'll do.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you touched on some of those points, because it's really frightening how ineffectual our government seems to be when it comes to an emergency, and they just leave the people to fend for themselves, more or less. Everything is just so very short-sighted. And, you know, that's one thing that I think that the Greens have really proved with their platform over the years, that they're looking at the problems into the future. And I trust Greens to listen to scientists and people with technical knowledge and make better judgments about what's socially in our interest, you know, than obviously the parties that are leading us over a cliff. But so that's really, yeah, you have something else you wanted to add?
También quiero decir algo en español para todos, toda la gente latina que habla español. Yo soy tejano, mexicano, de una familia migrante, y creo que para la gente latina que está escuchando, ustedes tienen su hogar aquí en el Partido Verde, y quiero que se unan a las causas que nosotros buscamos avanzar. Entonces, vénganse para acá y ya abajo con los dos partidos, porque no buscan solucionar los problemas que nosotros tenemos en la comunidad latina.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's see if we can get Antonio Padron also to join us. He is also in Bexar County and is running for House District 119. Is that right, Antonio?
That is correct.
And the same to you. What would you bring to the office you seek?
Well, hey everybody. For the office seat, you know, we bring a lot to the table. Right now, we're dealing with Republicans and Democrats who are lackluster in ideas. So first off, I just want to say hi everybody. Hi Angela and Howie. Thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to be with us and share your support. We appreciate it very much and commend y'all for your efforts in the race for the presidency. It's not easy running for office, but y'all are doing an awesome job, and we want y'all to know that we have y'all's back 1,000%. We love you, and the Greens in San Antonio are excited and very proud to be representing the Green Party. It's tough running as a Green because there are systemic and ideological barriers in place, but we are here to dissolve them and unplug people from the status quo programming. Every day, people are waking up to the corruption of our government, and they are searching for somebody to hear their concerns. So the Democrats and Republicans like to act like they hear us, but we know the truth. They don't care. And they'd rather listen to big money interests and lobbyists. There is a party that cares, and that's us, the Green Party. As Greens, it's our duty to continue building and offering a home for people who feel alienated, and we need to continue to collaborate with our brothers and sisters who seek solidarity. This is not a popularity contest to us, and it never has been. You know, the Greens have done an amazing job in creating a platform that addresses a spectrum of issues, and we need to continue to build people up and not tear them down like the Democrats and Republicans do. The deep programming continues, and we want people to know that we stand in solidarity with those who are concerned with the inequalities we face collectively. And we stand by the tanky values of the Green Party and support ideas like Medicare for all, defunding the police, demilitarizing the police, the real Green New Deal, education reform, etc. It's our mission to enlighten our communities and form a coalition of people who aim to change the system for the better. We aren't ashamed, and we aren't scared to call out the abuse put by the two-party system. The fight continues, and we will always stand against corruption. So if elected into the House, we plan to take on Republicans and Democrats head on. And we're in Texas, so we are dealing with people who don't really have ideas, and they'd rather listen to people with big money interests, the lobbyists. So we're looking to challenge them head on and, fight until we get the change we want to see.
That's awesome. I love the breadth of your perspective, and you guys are doing such a fine job, I think, trying to take the Green platform and ideas to the people. So I definitely salute you for that. We also have, for House District 92, Brody Andrew Mulligan. I believe that's Tarrant County. Am I correct in that, Brody?
You are. You've got your geography correct. That is right. Hello, everybody. I'm Brody Andrew Mulligan. First of all, thanks, Howie and Angela. It's nice to see you guys. And thank you very much for all of the work you're doing it's a tough fight out there for you guys, as it is here in Texas for us. And we're really stoked to have our candidates on. And I would associate myself also with the remarks that Howie made at the top of this broadcast about the passing of RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Hope she rests in power. But about myself, I'm a music educator in Texas. I've taught in Texas public schools for about 8 or 9 years. In addition to that, what I would like to bring to the office most closely align, ironically, as fate would have it, with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Having taught for 7 to 9 years in public school, you kind of get a fix on some of the issues that are important to people. And as an educator, when we look at who we're going to send down to Austin to fix some of the issues that we have, and there are many, sending a teacher who's actually taught in a public school in different economic circumstances kind of makes sense to me. I think I might know a little bit about ways we can improve our education system. One of the biggest things is making sure that we're looking at a fair funding formula. And when we talk about things that I absolutely support in our party values, like the BLM movement, gender equality, racial equality, social justice, economic justice, finding new ways of funding our schools so we're not having poor schools in poor communities due to lack of resources is something that the state legislator can absolutely take on and tackle. But also from a public health perspective, I have a DMAT certification as a disaster medical assistance team response member. I've actually worked for the Tarrant County Public Health Department in vaccination distribution during H1N1. I know exactly what responses are needed to take economically as well as institutionally and infrastructure-wise to make sure that we can get our state back to a safe and reasonable way. And so some of the things that I would like to bring to the party as well, and also the platform, is to make sure that we're providing economic stability, not just for our voters and our residents, but also as someone who's been working with Abolish ICE out of Tarrant, getting ICE out of our communities is a huge priority for me. The only ICE that I acknowledge is a kind that goes in a drink. And making sure that we also use our state legislative resources, like our rainy day fund, to help out our Hispanic communities, those communities that have been left behind that didn't get federal assistance, and make sure that we have our schools funded, our teachers safe, and institute immediate oversight of police and reform are all very important issues. And so in my district, it's a tough fight. But what we find here is that we've got a very strong level of support among our county party, and people are very enthused to be able to have the option to vote for such a progressive platform. And it's exciting and energizing to see that, I had a supporter who messaged me and they said, I thought that I was the only person out there in the whole county, right, who believes in these ideas. And then you start to see hey, there's someone out there like Howie and like Angela that have been fighting for these issues, that believe in them, that it's not just something that's a hobby. It's not something that is in passing, but it's sort of what is in your heart, where your values are, and putting that to action and making sure that when I get in, and one of the goals that we push is making sure that also we can, at the state level, get ranked choice or preferential or another system of voting so that we can have diversity of candidates. So we're not stuck in the two-party system, which has failed so many people and drove people away from participating in our democracy, and give candidates a fair shake. So those are some of the things that I'd love to see in our state, and I'd love to see and bring to our district.
But I love the breadth of issues that Greens are always mindful of. And so that's awesome, Brody. And I hope you don't mind if I brag on you and one of our other candidates, Hal Ridley, just a little bit. We talked at the beginning about this uncertainty about the filing fee. And it's really clear what a barrier to candidate filing this was, because half a dozen of our candidates, the fee would have prevented them from being candidates. But Brody and Hal are two candidates who, bit the bullet and scraped together, to pay these exorbitant fees. And so, so I just really salute our Green candidates who are in it to bear the flag forward one way or the other, and you know, keep pushing for our party. So thanks for joining us, Brody. Maybe we could get Hal Ridley Jr. running in Congressional District 36 to join us for just a second and talk for just a minute, Hal, hi, about what you would bring to the office that you seek if you had an opportunity to serve.
I bring my dog. Awesome possum.
We like dogs, it's good.
Watch out, no. How are y'all today? Hope y'all are safe and well. I'm not very good at this. Amateur.
It's all right, we're not.
I want to try to bring some different solutions to the table that really are not talked about very much, but we don't seem to have a place at the table. So, you know, first we have to get us a place and then move on up. I think that we need nuts and bolts solutions. We need physical ways to change the way we live. Invention and innovation, entrepreneurial acumen, that's what we have to pull ourselves up from this downward spiral we're in. We need to improvise some wings. There's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of creative people that are out here doing a lot of work that's going ignored. It's just not, it's not part of the economy that we have. But I believe that everything we need to create the world we want from the world we have is here or near here. And we have to look and explore and find the creative ideas, bring them all together, try to put them together in a holistic, synergistic model. We really need to be, you know, out of the box. Everybody says that, but we need to be big changes.
Right.
You know, it's not going to work tinkering here, tinkering there. We need fundamental change on a wide scale.
Yeah,
and,
systemic.
One good thing about the times we're in, believe it or not, is the best time for revolutionary change is when the barbarians are at the gate. When the barbarians are at the gate, the fear of the external threat is greater than the fear of overthrowing the internal order. Great change is going to come either way, but it's better if that change comes by us instead of to us. And that's what we need to look at. You cannot get people on my little, I've started Twitter. I'm not into all that stuff, but I write about new ideas that are all over the place, that are being worked on. MIT, there's these battery guys. There's, it's just a long list, and we're so sidetracked from our lives that we can't focus. That inability to focus on what we want. I mean, the conservatives, they wrote some memos in the 70s, and they took 8 or 10 years to get Reagan in, and then they've gone to town the last 40 years, and we need a memo too.
Yeah, overarching strategy.
Look ahead far enough that is going to make a difference, because the change is going to come. A lot of people don't think it's here. A lot of people don't. It's here. It's done. It's happening. If you have to, if you see it, you get on board.
I definitely appreciate the perspective on innovation, and that we just can't hold back in terms of the urgency of the situation and how we're going to have to look to new solutions. It's challenging for a little party of lay people and volunteers to necessarily have, chase down various technical solutions and whatnot. But I think one thing that's definitely fair to say is that a green administration would take the blinders off in terms of profit motive and what is on the table to try to improve people's lives. And that's a big part of the motivation for me, is to get the solutions on the table. So I definitely salute you for bringing that, Hal.
Well, I want to say one thing real fast.
Go ahead.
The last thing that I wrote about was a new type of a device that it's kind of like a battery, and it stores heat. So you heat this thing up, it gets really hot, and then you can hold that heat as a storage, or you can use it to make steam. And essentially what you have is a coal-fired electric plant without the coal. Everything else works. You're just changing one thing. Now this thing is already ready. It's already done. Why has nobody ever talked about that? Because it's not good for the people that run this show. They don't want it. They want to stop it. They want oil. I'm from Southeast Texas. This is not the belly of the beast. This is just south of the belly of the beast. This place is full of refineries, petrochemical plants. All the pipelines come here, oil field, and Trump people. This is really the enemy. You know, these people here are trying to risk the planet for next quarter's profit.
It's definitely very clear that entrenched financial interests are an obstacle to making good choices, and we
can get rid of those financial interests. There's Bitcoin and stuff like that, digital currency. We don't need a bank anymore. That stuff is already there. It's already done. I mean, we just have to bring it all together and have the vision it takes to, you know, a lot of times people are just no.
Yeah.
No. And the thing about that is we all make lots of mistakes, and there's lots of times that a good idea is
yes, it can get overlooked.
A bad idea is a good idea in disguise. You just can't tell what it is yet until you go look, and we don't look. We go our own merry way. Look, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And
thanks for joining us, Hal. We have another, I think this is our last candidate in the queue, if I'm not mistaken. Tom Wakely running for Congressional 21 in Bexar County. We have static noise. Wait, the noise. Wait, oh no, Tom's audio might not be quite right. Are we having difficulty with Tom's audio? So Tom Wakely is running in Bexar County for Congressional District 21, and we're so excited about his candidacy because he has run for that position as a progressive Democrat in the past, but he's changed party lines. He's had a strong showing in that finish and had been polling. The candidates had been polling at about 1/3 each before the Democrats knocked him off the ballot in this very nefarious way that we talked about. And so now getting him restored to the ballot, that's very exciting, but we're having some difficulty with his audio having a lot of noise every time we put him up on screen. So maybe we could work out the audio issues for Tom. And I did get that question in that we were expecting as well, but I hate for us to change gears. Let's see. Tom, can you hear us?
I can hear you and I can see you, so it's a question of can you hear me and see me?
Oh, your audio is pretty rough and overdriven, but maybe you can tell us.
I've got two microphones. Let me unplug one of them and see if that helps. Hold on.
Oh, goodness. Okay. We're going to hang up. Well, the extra noise went away. Now talk to us, Tom. Now I can't hear you. Oh, no, technical difficulties. I used to work at a TV station a long time ago. Nobody likes technical difficulties. That sounds like it's going to be better.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, kind of overdriven. You don't need to push it. Maybe you can tell us softly and briefly what we need to turn down your volume. Tom, I'm so sorry. The viewers heard at the end. The loud noise. Oh goodness. Tom, let's see.
Yeah.
It is not unusable. So yeah, maybe you could just briefly answer.
I can't hear you guys. Hold on a second.
Don't lose your eardrum, y'all. Okay, so maybe you could briefly tell us what perspective you would bring to the office you seek as a king. Tom, can you hear us? I don't know if Tom can hear us anymore. Okay. Tom seems not to hear us anymore. I'll tell you what, maybe we could go ahead and pull Tom out until we can work out the kinks in his connection. And we were going to segue after touching with all the candidates. A couple weeks ago, we had some outreach from the ADOS Central Texas chapter to the Green Party of Texas asking about some questions related to our position on reparations and recommendations that had been made from ADOS communities related to HR 40. And I wasn't able to give a totally detailed answer other than my initial response that certainly input from concerned groups seemed consistent with what I understood of the party platform. So I asked if they wanted to send an actual formulated question. So I'll go ahead and read that now. They say they wanted to know if your party supports transformational reparations for ADOS HR 40 with Dr. Darity's edits. Would the GP accept ADOS as its own ethnic designation? And so I wanted to refer that question to you guys. Let me know if you need me to read it again. Do you feel like you could field that?
Not in every detail, but could give it some remarks. Well, we support HR 40. That is a bill to study and develop proposals for reparations for African Americans. And I think the study part's important because Black America hasn't yet spoken up in an organized way to formulate what they believe are proper reparations. There's a debate between how much should be individual, because average Black household wealth is about 1/10 of white average household wealth, and that's due to generations of segregation, discrimination, and exploitation. And in the last decade, Black America lost half its wealth because of the aftermath of the Great Recession and predatory lending, foreclosures, computerized fraud through robo-signing, and now the man who's Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, there are over 1,000 counts of housing discrimination and mortgage fraud recommended against him by Kamala Harris's staff when she was California Attorney General. She declined to prosecute, and they got a $2,000 donation from Steve Mnuchin. The king of robo-signing was old Wilbur Ross, who had all these mortgage servicing companies. And for the Obama administration, these corporate crooks were too big to jail. And that's basically what Holder told Congress at the beginning of the second Obama term. So people say, well, reparations for slavery, that was a long time ago. Hey, this just happened in the last decade. How about reparations for that? We also think that part of the question should be international reparations. You know, slavery didn't just exploit and oppress enslaved people in this country. it was part of the beginning of the colonization of Africa and the stealing of people and resources from Africa that goes on to this day through capitalist international financial institutions and military intervention, Africa Command. There's a whole thing there. So we think a good approach is to first study and hear from particularly Black people about what they want for reparations. The collective reparations side is what James Foreman first raised in 1969 when he brought the Black Manifesto to Riverside Church, asking the churches and synagogues to finance collective reparations for African Americans, a land bank to recover the land lost from Black farmers, Black broadcasting and print media, Black think tanks and the university, because the concern of Foreman, who came out of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, was that if you just give money to people within a system of racial capitalism, the capitalists are going to use that racist system to get all that money back the way they concentrate it now. So there's a lot to study there. And then the other thing I'll say is, you know, Martin Luther King, when he gave his speech at the March on Washington in 1963, and this isn't the I have a dream part, that was added on at the end. It's something he had talked about before, and he added it on because Mahalia Jackson said, tell him about the dream, Martin. And that was, you know, his preacher thing that he'd been doing. His prepared remarks, he said that this march came here to cash in a promissory note from the federal government, you know, provide for the common welfare is in the Constitution. And he said, we're disappointed that the government tells us that check can't be cashed for insufficient funds, and said, we don't believe there's insufficient funds. And what they were talking about at the March on Washington, right through that whole period of the Black Freedom Movement to the Poor People's Campaign, was an economic bill of rights, the right to a job, an income above poverty, health care for the people, a massive housing program to make sure everybody had decent, affordable housing. And here we are, 50 years later, and we lost the war on poverty in Vietnam, as King pointed out, by coming out against the war and getting vilified for it at Riverside Church 2 years before James Foreman was there. And King was right. And because at a time when the Democrats had both houses and President Johnson, they couldn't get it done. They've had their opportunities. Roosevelt first raised the idea of economic bill of rights, his last two State of the Union addresses. And every Democratic president has had at least one term where both houses of Congress were Democrat. And none of these rights have been realized. And their goal was to undermine the racist backlash that was being mobilized by the Goldwater Republicans and the Dixiecrats back in the 60s by having the Black Freedom Movement lead a multiracial movement of the poor and the working class for these economic rights. And instead of leaving the white working people to be mobilized by the white racist elites. And because we didn't win that in the 60s, the white backlash is now in the White House. So I think that's another thing we need to keep in context. And we don't have to wait for a reparation study to get that economic bill of rights, which will help disproportionately Black people because they tend to be in the bottom of the income spectrum. So there's a lot to say about that, but the three things I would say is let's study and get it right. So when the proposal put forward, it actually solves the problem. We need to look at the international dimension because colonialism and imperialism, slavery was just a part of a global system that has oppressed Black people and other people of color around the world. And third, that economic bill of rights don't have to wait for a study. It's something we can implement right away. So I'm sure Angela has something to add.
And just thinking about, because I was looking at the question in the chat, having ADOS as an ethnic designation, I think that's also something that would have to be put to the question, you know, with Black communities around the country, because everyone doesn't identify that way. I think it's something that would also have to be tabled, you know, nationwide, because, you know, Black folks are not a monolith. We don't all move the same way. We don't all have the same history, same background, even, you know, even 6 generations born into this country. You know, we don't all identify the same way. So I think that that is also something that would have to be tabled, in our communities around the country.
Well, I thank you both so much for your input on that. I did want to address the question when it was put, but I felt out of my depth and certainly standing to fully answer it. And I don't know that it's necessarily, the answer exactly like people would want to hear, but I think it's fair to say that the party is certainly interested in the input that people have to bring, and that we don't want anybody left behind. That's why we're talking about an economic Bill of Rights, and that we have to have that in order to be able to ease the kind of transitions that we need to make. I think that that's probably pretty fair to say. So thank you guys for taking that, and I'll check my message there again to see if there's any kind of follow-up. Angela, you wanted to?
I'm looking at a question in the chat that says there are different Black people in America, but the descendants of slaves need reparations. That's not the issue. That isn't what I was saying. Among the descendants of enslaved people in this country, we do not all identify the same way. The question is not about whether our communities need reparations. They absolutely do. The harm that the Ma'afa has done to our people has been proven to change our DNA. So I think there's something to be said. This country's promissory note, as it's been said, to our people has come due decades ago. That's not the issue. The issue is everyone does not identify in one way. That's all. That was my point.
Certainly fair point. And so thank you for that feedback. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys about, we're so focused on the struggle and trying to get on the ballot, trying to make headway towards winning. I don't think we necessarily get to imagine for ourselves, what it would be like. And so that's why I've been asking each of the candidates, what they would bring if they were to get to serve in the office that they're seeking. And so it looks like maybe we could try Tom one more time and see if Tom could get us to something. Go ahead and give it a try, Tom.
I can see and hear you guys. Whether you can see and hear me is a different question.
We can hear you, but your audio is so super loud.
It is a Logitech webcam. I've never had a problem with it on Zoom or anything else. It's just a Logitech webcam. There's no way to adjust the volume on that because it's a web. Hold on. Maybe there's a way to adjust the volume somewhere. I need a 10-year-old to figure this out.
Yeah, maybe you could just try to very briefly answer the question. What are the main things you would try to bring to the office?
I don't think it can be answered in just a sentence or two. I think, as I'm focused on the district, what are the needs in the district? We've got Karen Morgan running a big pipeline through. The district that I'm running for is bigger than the state of Connecticut. So I can tell you it takes me 2.5 hours to go up one way, then to cross over from Fredericksburg back to Austin 3 hours, then another hour and a half back down to San Antonio. It's a big district, so the needs of the hill country, like I said, right now, eminent domain is the big issue there. In the urban areas of San Antonio, some different issues. So
the needs of the district, of course, key, and I know talking about
it's not a monolith. It's just so much different parts. Up in Fredericksburg, wine country. They have big issues up there, different from the issues down in Murray, Texas.
Of course. Right. Well, I'm so sorry we're having such difficulty with the audio, but we want to do everything we can. You have something else you want to add?
Angela, you're from Milwaukee, right?
You're from Milwaukee, right?
I said something smart. I'll behave myself. Yes, I am.
I bought my first house in Milwaukee. I went to UW Milwaukee.
Cool.
Did you hear that? I bought my first house in Milwaukee. I was a union organizer in Milwaukee for a number of years. My daughter was born in Brookfield. Yeah, she was born in Brookfield.
Well,
And Howie, you were in the Socialist Party. I have a buddy that knows it fairly well. I guess he's been for years the archivist, Steve Rosenthal.
Yeah, I know him.
I Tom, the audio quality is just so harsh. I think we're going to have to wrap with you and just wish you the best in your race in Bexar County. I'm sorry to cut you off.
I've never seen what's with a steam yard. I mean, I'm used to doing the Zoom, you know, so don't seem to have a problem. There must be something wrong with the webcam usage for the steam yard. I don't know.
Yeah, just a little bit of a technical problem, but thank you for joining us so much. Sorry about the punishing audio on everybody's ears, but but it's nice to get everybody's thoughts about, you know, bringing a green perspective forward. And that's kind of where I wanted to field a question to you guys, Howie and Angela, again, about, you know, if we had a really surprising, wonderful result and you guys won and were able to bring a green administration forward. I know you have a lot of plans for hitting the ground running. And I know Greens have a lot of respect for experts and people with technical expertise. I wonder if you could comment on how you would see a Green administration working out in terms of the spectrum of talent that you would be able to tap from all over that's would certainly be willing to serve, and how you might be able to build a bridge, not being locked into the current polarized environment. Do you have thoughts on that?
Okay, Angela's pointing at me to go first. Well, look, the most important thing, there are plenty of very sharp people. And unlike the president who says he knows everything about everything and knows nothing about anything that matters, we know we don't know everything. So first thing is we bring in competent people and expert people, and we would listen to them. Somebody mentioned William Darity in reference to reparations. He's somebody, I've read a lot of his stuff. He's somebody, you know, we would enlist in some way or other. I would bring in Edward Snowden, free him of the charges against him. He did us a public service to tell us the National Security Agency was spying on all of us. And he has a commitment to liberal democracy and sees that as the, you know, the conflict with authoritarianism is the big question in the world today. He's got the right values, he's got the expertise, and he's shown his commitment to this country. So I would bring him in because I'm like Tom, I got to look for a 10-year-old or at least a young guy like Edward Snowden. So we'd bring those kind of people in. But I think even more important is, you know, we'd be up against the ruling class in this country, you know, the corporate state, and they would want to hamstring us. So the movement that got us elected would have to stay mobilized. And look, the ruling class has extra electoral powers, like buying treasury securities to finance government. And if they strike on that, we're in a bind. Bill Clinton found that out. He had a very modest reform program of some infrastructure investments, some school investments, and a middle-class tax cut. And Robert Rubin from Goldman Sachs, who he appointed as his economic transition team, told them, you can't do that because the bond traders don't want that. So Bill Clinton said, you mean to tell me that I can't get reelected and implement my reform program because of a bunch of effing bond traders? Yeah, Bill, that's how the power works. So that means working people, direct action at work, in the community, would have to back up what we're trying to do at the federal level. And part of that is socializing public finance. And we have a monetary reform program. We also want public banks. So there's a lot. I mean, we know what to do if we got the power. But I want to say, and this refers to a question I saw in the chat, what happens if we actually got 5%, which is a threshold for the FEC to recognize us as a minor party and qualifies us for federal campaign funding for the fall general election in 2024. That's all it does. It's a national popular vote, and the Green Party ticket gets that money in September 2024. It's a lot of money. Major parties are defined as 25% or more. This year, they would have got $100 million, a little over $100 million. Of course, they're raising billions, including a lot of dark money. We don't know where it comes from. So they stay out of that public financing system. But for the Green Party, it would be major. It's a prorated grant based on the difference, 5 to 25%. So we got 5%. We'd get at least $20 million to run our campaign in the fall of 2024. That would be significant. On the other hand, it's a long shot. This is a tough year. Understandably, a lot of people are saying anybody but Trump. What we got to tell people is the Green Party is a second front against Trump. Vote for the Green Party is not a vote for Trump, like some of these Democrats like to say. It's illogical. A vote for the Green Party is in the green column, not the Trump column. And in most states, we already know who's going to get the majority in with the electoral colleges. And Trump looks like toast. I mean, the polls have been pretty steady since the fall, consistently 7% difference with Biden ahead nationally. And in most of the battleground states from 2016, Biden's substantially or significantly ahead. You look at the Real Clear Politics electoral college projection, it's a landslide for Biden. So the question for progressives is, how are you going to cast your vote? How are you going to use it? You vote for Biden, who's against the Green New Deal, against Medicare for all. His legacy, somebody mentioned the Koch brothers in the chat. Joe Biden got Koch brothers money because he was in the Democratic Leadership Council, whereas Jesse Jackson called it back in the 80s, the the DLC, Democrats for the Leisure Class. And that's, he was is a very conservative Democrat. So that's, you vote for Biden, nobody knows if you're a progressive, you want Medicare for all or a Green New Deal. You vote for Angela and me, everybody knows what we stand for, and then your vote is heard. You aren't giving away your power. So I think, people are trying to shame us voting Green. We should shame progressives who think voting for Biden is going to get them anywhere. I wrote down a couple of notes. I might as well get to them now. So I'm saying 5% is hard. The best we ever did was Ralph Nader 2000. That was 2.7%. And this year is very tough. Somebody asked, how are we going to fund the Green Party? We have to do it. Bernie Sanders showed us how. Lots of little people giving a little bit on a regular basis. We need to become a mass membership, dues paying party. And we can compete. We don't need all that dark money in billions. We had a few $100 million, like Bernie raised over the last 4 years. Man, oh man. I mean, Democrats and Republicans would be in trouble because the issues we stand for, you look at public opinion polling on Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and so forth. We're the party that the most people, our platform supports. And so, the problem we got is translating that in. And the last thing I just want to say is, I'm so excited you got so many good candidates in Texas. Because as far as I'm concerned, you're more important than Angela and me. Because if we're going to build the Green Party into a major party in force, we got to be electing thousands of people as we go into the 2020s. The city council, school boards, and then from there, state legislatures and Congress. And we got a caucus in Congress, and we run a Green Party, and we got a mass base that's supporting it with regular dues. Man, I think, then we're going to win. That's how the Republican Party grew from the Liberty Party against slavery to the Free Soil Party to the Republican Party. When Lincoln ran, he wasn't a third party candidate. He was a first party candidate because the Republicans in after the 1858 election, had a plurality of members of Congress, and they built it from the bottom up. That's the model. So I'm just so excited to hear, these great candidates down there in Texas. And then somebody said they get 2 people to vote for us if I said I'd tried the Travis Scott burger. And I thought that was reference to my treasurer, Travis Crystal, but maybe it's something else in Texas. I don't know what it is, but I will tell you, I did go through Texas last year, and there's a soul food restaurant in Waco, Texas, that is one of the best I ever ate at. It reminds me of one that this extended family I'm a part of used to run in Syracuse. And man, I got pictures of it and everything. So if you're in Waco, look for that restaurant. So anyway, I'm just excited. You got so many good candidates. And I don't know what the threshold is to keep your ballot line or extend the period you have it, but let's get that threshold for people like Katya for railroad commissioner and Dave for senator. I think those are the ones that count. I don't know if the presidential number counts as well. What percentage is it?
It does. Yeah, the new law lowered it from 5% to 2% in a statewide race. And in 2016, we had our railroad commissioner get 3.25% in a 4-way race. So we feel like 2% in a statewide race, either between you guys or our statewide candidates, are very doable. Right now, we have ballot access through 2026. If we earn 2% or more in a statewide race, that'll extend us to 2030. So that's all very promising for us being able to really develop our candidate pipeline and work out some of our processes a bit better. Another thing that's a little bit odd is that the off-year elections, the odd-numbered year elections, local and county and stuff, a lot of those races are nonpartisan races. Anyway, but we're working out our details here. And another point you made about this whole red state, blue state business, in Texas, vote green, because if you vote, blue and the Republicans take it like they generally do, then, you might as well have tossed your vote away. So, it's an even stronger argument to vote green here. And sometimes I hear people say, oh, well, the Electoral College would never let them have it or whatever. I just want you to know, we have our slate of electors in with the Secretary of State's office. So I know people get very disillusioned and frustrated. Maybe they feel like stuff's just so slanted against us, but we submitted our slate of electors like other parties. And if you guys should win it, we have electors who are ready to go and vote for you guys. So we just need to do our best. And I have a totally exciting thing to show you guys when we're ready here, because we're going to try to get some campaign marketing in front of eyeballs here. I want to show you that in just a little bit. But did Angela want to jump in related to vision and administration and how things would start off maybe?
I'm trying to wrangle my dog. She had she had a nightmare and came charging down here. She's been antsy ever since. I'm thinking diplomacy, and everything that Howie said. I mean, I think one of the problems that we've had in this country is the fact that we like to elect people and then we stand back and hey, y'all got it. We put you in office, handle it. And it's like how he said, people need, once you elect people, it's our job to stay on them. It's our job to make sure that the policies that we elected them for get passed and that they are implemented in the way that we elected them to do it. And so I think that, this whole thing that we've done with the duopoly of treating politicians like rock stars and just kind of standing back and saying, okay, well, y'all got it, and then when they are guilty of the excesses that we're seeing, then it's like, oh, I think we've taken a role as a populace where we are, we've forgotten that this is not a spectator sport. This is full participation. And it's not just every 4 years when you want, or stop, Dita, goodness. She's antsy. Where you want to elect somebody, this is not the only time you show up. This is 365 days of the year, moving things in your communities and being involved in those issues. And I know that it's exhausting. Trust me, I get it. But I think one of the things that has to come out of this is that, you know, whatever happens in November, at least not just folks in the Green Party, but folks all along the left, I think we've been put on notice that, you know, this is not a spectator thing. And, you know, being, you know, really pushing and standing on what we believe, particularly because we're getting hammered for it. This is the one time the Democrats find courage. They can't stand up to the Republicans about anything, but they can sure hammer on us. Real brave. Stop. If you chew that, I'm gonna get you. So that's pretty much what I've wanted to add, is that this is not just a thing that we do every 4 years because people need to get elected and then it's time for us to kind of stand back. We're going to take a much more active role, you know, year round than I think a lot of people are used to. And I think it's worth it. Our people are going to need us. There's still rebellions. There's still a pandemic. There's still economic uncertainty hanging over a lot of people's heads. So our folks need us.
Yeah, and you know, you're so right. I think people do look at it as kind of this spectator sort of thing, and there is this tendency towards hero worship. I think of it as just people are very consumer trained, and they kind of want to just switch brands, and they want it to be a very off-the-shelf solution that meets their expectations and has the kind of slick marketing that they expect from a product, because we are so consumer trained. But I think, you know, Greens are waking up, you know, and people are waking up to the fact that, you know, we have to lay this track ourselves. We have to work out the infrastructure for getting our candidates to the ballot and hold on to these organizations on a state-by-state level. So not only supporting the campaign during this peak time, but supporting the national party on an ongoing basis so that they could professionalize with staff and improve their function, supporting your state party, making sure it's actually functioning, helping your state party develop your local party, so that we can get all of those bases covered, because you know, we need people who have the vision to see that this is a long-term, long-haul project, and that we're laying that groundwork with what we do. And also, you know, this criticism that, oh, Greens only show up every 4 years and run a presidential candidate. People don't realize that the presidential campaign is the spearhead of the ballot access effort across the nation. And, you know, that some states require a presidential campaign for a party to seek ballot access. So, you know, trying to shut Greens down in this way is equivalent to saying that Greens don't have the right to develop their own political party. And that's fundamentally an anti-democratic position. So, you know, I think we're breaking through, and we need to continue this demand to not be ignored, and to have our candidates heard when they show up and try to gain entrance. We only have this handful of 7 candidates now in Texas. This time we had 50 plus candidates in 2016. Obviously, Texas is a huge state, 254 counties, really just intimidating. I feel like if we could work out our issues in Texas, we could scale up and really provide benefit to the national party, because it's kind of like the puzzle's big enough here, it might translate. But anyway, so we certainly want to contribute what we can. And on that note, I'm going to get some help rolling out. The campaign was kind enough to help us with design for a 4-foot by 12-foot freeway banner. We now have these ordered for 5 cities, and we're going to have volunteers doing freeway signage. So let me just unveil this here. I don't know, can you see the whole thing?
Hold on. We need to come this way.
Hey.
Oh my God!
I go back. I go this way back.
That is
I could go. I can't go. Huh?
Oh my
So
goodness.
anyway, and we did put the txgreens.org on here, but you guys, the campaign could do this all across the nation.
That is, oh my goodness.
So here, I'll let you roll it back up. But,
Yeah, so there's the picture better. Yes.
so exciting stuff. We're gonna roll it
Oh
up.
my God.
So Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, El Paso, and Austin for now. And if we get, committed volunteer corps, then we'll provide them for other cities as well. But since you have the design already, I don't know, it only took us about 4 or 5 days to get it from Vistaprint. Maybe you guys could get some other volunteers to do it elsewhere too. So
I refuse to tear up on camera. It's not going to happen. I will not be tearing up here. Oh my God.
Talk about larger than life. It's really larger than life.
Those can also be put on electronic billboards. And they really, especially at night, they light it up. We had a young woman in Pritchard, Alabama, Chiquizia Clemens, and I'm going into Pritchard, and there she is, big as life on a billboard, and it really jumped out. And it, it's one of those electronic boards that flips. So that's another thing for people to consider.
Yeah. So yeah, we are a do-it-yourself party. So everybody, if you're watching, we encourage you to plug in with your local and state party. This is my hubby who helps me with all this stuff.
I just want to say hi, Howie. Great to see you again. It was great to have you over last year or earlier this year.
This was last September.
Last September.
Anyway, but again, thank you guys so much for taking all this time to talk to us and celebrate with us. It's really cool to hang out with you.
We
cool to
are
hang out with
honored.
you.
Yes.
And I just want people to realize the election is upon us. I already got Greens in Minnesota messaging me that they voted for me today on their mail-in ballots. So it started, and we need to be doing all we can the next 7 weeks.
Well, we'll be doing what we can down here, that's for sure.
Great.
No, we thank you for having us, and having us be present to lift up not only your victory but the amazing people that y'all are running down there. So I'm geeked.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will keep you posted. All right, so it looks like we're getting that cue from our producer in the chat who says, okay, let's wrap it up. So I guess we say good night then. Until next time.
That's right. Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Take care.